Is Annie Hanshew, and I am at the home of John Driscoll in Helena, Montana. It is January 30th, 2014, and we are doing an interview as part of the Smokejumper Stories Oral History Project. Is that the correct title?
That's right.
Okay. First of all, John, before we get started, do you consent to being recorded today?
Yes, I do.
Wonderful. Well, what I'd like to do first is ask you a little bit about your background in your childhood. So if you could give me information like where you were born, when you were born, a little bit of info about your parents.
Well, I was born in Los Angeles, California.
Okay.
My parents were down there just after the war. Dad was in the Navy. He'd come back from the Mediterranean Fleet, was going to USC, and Mom was working at Queen of Angels.
Okay.
I'm a fifth generation Montanan from the mining families of Butte.
Okay.
And so we came home after about 2 years, and then my father worked in the mines, got hurt. My mother worked in the hospitals around Montana. After Dad got hurt, he became a highway patrolman, and we transferred from to Billings and Miles City and the Bitterroot. And
Okay.
that's where I learned about smoke jumping.
Okay. Just to go back a little bit, you said you were born right after the war. When exactly were you born?
July 17th, 1946.
We share a birthday. I was also born on July 17th.
That's
Yeah, that's a great coincidence. And about when did you move to Hamilton? How old were you?
I was in the 7th grade. I guess
Okay.
that makes me about 12, 1958.
Sure. Okay.
It was like the Beverly Hillbillies coming from Miles City in an old beat truck.
Oh yeah, and to the metropolis that is Hamilton, Montana.
Yeah, Lolo School and Lolo Church was all that was there up at the upper end of the valley. And after a 24-hour road trip, my dad stopped in the middle of the night and he said to my mother, "Well, here we are." And
Yeah.
she hit the ceiling. She said, "You made me leave my house in Miles City for this godforsaken place."
Oh,
But
that's
anyhow,
funny.
the Bitterroot turned out to be a really great place to live.
Oh, that's great. So you said your dad was highway patrol
Right.
in Hamilton, and your mom was a homemaker?
My mother, well, she was that for sure. I did a lot of that because she worked night shifts at the hospital.
Oh,
usually.
still in Hamilton too.
Yeah, so she was a registered nurse and she worked in Hamilton at Marcus Daly Hospital.
Oh, very cool. Okay, so you said you first heard about the smoke jumpers when you were youngin' in Hamilton.
Yeah, it was about after I arrived. I had never heard of them before, but I was in the Boy Scouts and we
Oh,
started
okay.
selling tickets for Red Skies over Montana.
Okay.
And I never did see that film until just recently, but all my friends were all excited about it, and I had friends who had brothers who were smoke jumpers, older brothers.
So you didn't actually see the movie when you were younger. You just knew about
Right,
the
and
film.
I knew how much my friends admired their big brothers who were smoke jumpers.
Do any big brothers stick out to you?
Well, I remember there was Bill Shoemaker. His dad was a forest ranger over at Magruder, and then he was one of our Boy Scout leaders. And Bill's, at least one of his brothers, I think a couple were jumpers.
Oh, okay.
In Missoula.
So what was it about smoke jumping that appealed to you?
Well, I really didn't understand it at the time. I was in school in the 8th grade in '59, I think it was, and my father came to the school, did something very unusual. He was a highway patrolman. He was directing traffic up on Lost Trail Pass for the Saddle Mountain fire. And he said, "Jack, I want you to come out of school. I want to show you something." So he took me out of school, which is the only time he ever did that. Put me in the patrol car, took me up on the pass, and then while he was directing traffic through the fire, I was watching fire crews cross the highway back and forth, and TBM Borate bombers go below me into the smoke, and I thought, I like this. This is okay.
Yeah.
So I got really exposed to forest fire for the first time.
Yeah.
Because I was a flatlander from Miles City up to that time.
That's an interesting point. Can you tell me how you reacted to coming from the landscape of Miles City to the Bitterroot? Because they are very different.
Oh yeah, it was quite an adjustment. We used to talk about it all the time. The snow came down straight, like in a Christmas card. Whereas in Miles City it goes horizontal, and there was mountains all around. Kind of made you claustrophobic.
Oh, interesting.
But that was the main differences. We didn't have to drive forever to find a place to throw out our family picnic and camping, and we went camping a lot. Every chance we did in the Bitterroot. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were kind of an outdoorsy family to begin with.
Yeah, and I was always the oldest. I was the oldest of 7.
Okay.
Setting up the tent, chopping the wood, taking care of the kids and so forth. It was great. It was really great in the Bitterroot.
Yeah, so it sounds like you had sort of a natural attraction to the outdoors and wilderness anyway, and then you were also raised in this firefighting or forestry community.
Yeah, but it was not. It was a gradual thing because I still didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so when I was in high school, some of my other friends, they were very involved with the Metcalf and Stuart Udall, those people with the first wilderness bill, which that was 50 years ago.
Right.
And Doris Milner, I mean, Brandy Brandberg, those are big names in the wilderness movement back then. And they were fighting against clear cuts, and I tried to pay attention to what they were doing.
Okay. Can you expand on that a little bit? Were you involved politically at that time period, or were you a little too young for that to be?
I was. It was just background noise.
Yeah, but certainly you were aware of this growing wilderness movement.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about how you became a smoke jumper.
Well, I needed money.
Okay.
And I had worked back in the Selway wilderness for about 3 years. My first jobs were back there in the wilderness area.
Okay.
And I was with all these old codgers, and they put me on there were people who really knew what they were doing in the hills. Loggers, road crew guys, people working on the trail, and I got to know, how to use dynamite and that kind of stuff, how to fall trees.
And what work were you doing exactly? What was your position?
I was back in Magruder, and I started out just as I think they called it a forest worker, wage board. I was just a labor kid, but we had a forest ranger there who was spectacular. He was one of the best managers I've ever worked for in my whole life. And I didn't know till just last week that he had been a smoke jumper. He never said anything about it. His name was Bob Shackelford, and he had the southern drawl. He was one hell of a manager. And he used to make me feel like I was participating in the management of the entire district.
Oh, yeah?
And I used to love watching him ride up over the hill with his horse and his dog Pinchu, and he was a really great guy. And he had a good staff, and everybody respected him. And so it was a great environment to be exposed to the working world. And of course, in a bunkhouse and in the cook shack, we had long tables with people reaching for food and listening to stories. And
oh, sure.
The more I was there, the more I wanted to be there. And then the second year, these two old cowboys, Frank Allen and Harold Urian, they somehow adopted me, and I ended up on these 30-day hitches out in the Selway wilderness area, maintaining about 700 miles of trail a summer.
Okay.
And it was absolutely the best job a young guy could ever have.
And so how old were you? What year was this?
Well, that'd be my second and third year with the Forest Service, so between my sophomore and junior year and junior and senior year.
Okay.
And those guys were merciless. They were always going to take me to town and show me how to be with the women and all that.
Yeah, sure.
They were all big talkers, but they were a lot of fun.
Oh.
And they seemed to, I fit in. It
was
good. And they'd give me a bad time when I tried to read my books for my summer reading program. I was going to college, but I learned a lot from those two guys. And later on, when I applied for graduate school, they asked who my 4 best teachers were, and 2 of my 4 best teachers were Frank and Harold.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
It was a great experience.
And so you were at Gonzaga for college, correct?
For undergraduate,
okay.
Yeah.
And what were the years for that?
I was admitted to Gonzaga for 1964, and I graduated and was commissioned in the Army in 1968.
Okay, got it. So you had experience working in the Selway.
Right.
And when did you become a smoke jumper then?
Well, 1968.
Okay.
And I think I've never been able to nail it down, but those guys, they all talk to each other.
Sure.
The fire control officers especially. And then you get these old characters that just hardly ever give you a break, but I know they talk, and if you do a good job for them, they pass the word on. And so when I applied, I think that helped.
Okay. So you were interested in smoke jumping, but they were also encouraging you to become a smoke jumper?
They like to keep people on the district, but when I told them I wanted to go do that,
yeah.
And what I was thinking was, Well, at the time, I wanted to make some money, but I couldn't be. I'd been back in the hills back in the mountain, way back, 30 days at a time. Didn't never spend a nickel. But I had a girlfriend, and she wasn't going to be going back there, and I was going to be going back east to graduate school. So part of it was, here was a chance to make some serious money, I thought, and be fairly close to my squeeze. And so she took a French class at the University of Montana while I was out trying to jump out of an airplane.
Oh, okay.
And that's the part I thought about. The part I didn't think about was jumping out of the airplane.
Oh, sure. Okay.